This video is brought to you by Redneck Engineer, custom-built gaming PCs and parts for an affordable price. Use code joshscorcher at checkout for a 5% discount. And make sure you don't have any coupon clipping extensions like Honey installed or I don't get my commission. Thank you! The concept of choose your own adventure has been around since before the 1980s, thanks to the popularity of the choose your own adventure novel. But nowadays, the concept is most seen in games. Why? Interactivity. Games don't just let you kill enemies and pick up items, they can be a medium to make the story your own. We're going to be ranking these based on gameplay and the weight of your choices within that gameplay. Can the story be manipulated by even the smallest choices? Does it have engaging gameplay to further immerse the player in the story they create? If it doesn't have either of those, you might as well just be watching a movie. Or playing a Telltale game. Or this Prosy D clip.
King Dragons. It's a good thing I always carried 2 guns.
Most video games follow a very simple principle with their storytelling. When the story calls for your character to do something, you have to do it. That's how a plot works after all. Sure, you get games like Spec Ops: The Line that call you a bad person for doing that, but what if we didn't like either of those? What if we just ignored any and all calls to adventure? Well, then you get the Stanley Parable. The premise is simple. Stanley is a simple office worker who finds his workplace empty and himself following a strange yellow line, in some cases. A narrator beckons you forth in the call to adventure. Or you could just ignore him. Yeah, just go whatever way you want. The narrator's not going to stop you. He'll just have to sit there and watch as you completely derail his plot.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
A few moments later.
You've destroyed my work! Why? For what? What did you get out of that? What did you think was so special about seeing the game left here like so much garbage? It's worthless now.
And that's the gameplay loop of the Stanley Parable. There's many ways to mess around with the game, and it's surprising just how many scenarios and opportunities it gives you and will react to. For example, there's just a broom closet, standard old broom closet that you can walk into. The broom closet. The narrator will remind you there's nothing in the broom closet. But if you decide to just stick around in there, in the broom closet, shut yourself in there for hours, in the broom closet, the narrator will be exasperated with the player's choice and even get mad about you posting about it online. About the broom closet. There's so many ways you can toy with this game. To list them all would be a disservice to the amount of experimentation you can do. All the endings the game has that depends on the different ways you follow the narrator's story or not, and updates only added to this. It's a short game, but it's a taste of how much games will pay attention to what you do.
And since when did I acquire all these portraits of
the broom closet? Quantic Dream is well known for their story-based games that are all about making choices. Whether they're famous or infamous for that, depends on who you ask. But regardless of the recurring writing choices, Detroit Become Human is definitely one of their better works. In a future where society is full of humans and androids, you follow 3 different main characters. Connor, an android officer in charge of solving cases involving rogue androids, Kara, a servant android on the run with a child in her custody, and Marcus, a deviant revolutionaire fighting for the freedom of androids. Every decision you make not only affects the stories individually, but they even affect each other. Decisions you make in Connor's route could lead to better or worse situations in Kara's story. You could have Connor and Marcus work together in one route, or fight each other in the other. Either way, it's pretty impressive just how many scenarios you can get out of this story. Admittedly, not all these routes are all that compelling. Kara's story has some pacing issues, and Marcus's romance arc is so vapid and makes me want to go back to Brothership or Sands of Time just to cleanse my palate. Really, Connor's story is what makes it all worthwhile. Not only is Brian Deckert's performance really endearing, but he's also partnered with the best character in the game, Spindlehorse Mr. Krabs.
I don't give a f about your stuff. What the I don't need a fish. Get the f out of my house. You're just a f***ing machine.
You know, we still don't have a Squidward swearing catalog yet. Weird, considering he strikes me as the one who'd do it most. The writing issues do keep the game from being higher on the list, but hey, stiff as it can be sometimes, it's still delivered its premise according to the program. Hey, remember this odd little game that I just happened to talk about out of nowhere? Yeah, how about we actually take a look at how it plays? Void Stranger is a dungeon-crawling puzzle game starring Mom of the Year on a journey to save a princess from a dungeon called the Void. In your hands is a rod that lets you collect and place tiles at will, opening up to a myriad of ways to solve each room. Create paths, block enemy routes, heck, you can even move the stairs! Now if only you could crush the enemies with it. The more you play, you start to notice just how many pieces of the puzzle there really are. The clues you find play a big part in the routes you can take along your journey, and the rod's usage is not as limited as it looks. Let's just say the stairs aren't the only way around the dungeon. While the game starts out difficult and restricted, once you understand how everything works, the game opens up so much. It's crazy how many ways Void Stranger lets you break it and even stray away from the main story. Interestingly, the choices are more gameplay-driven than story-driven. You get different routes and endings, not only from solving some quests and riddles differently, but also breaking the UI. Yeah, you can do that and cheat your way across the void. Each of these different endings even provide you with lore pieces that help put the bigger story together. Speaking of which, get ready for a plethora of story bits that aren't gonna make sense from the get-go. Sure, there's the Mother Saves Daughter main story that's easy enough to follow, but then there's also the story of the Void Lords, which also ties to the main story and its characters thematically. Plus, some endings reveal bizarrely vague lore about how this void came to be and why. I mean, yeah, it's not that complicated once you have it all lined up, it just arranges it in a way that makes it ridiculously confusing. No, you are not taking notes! Yeah, the game gets more and more riddle-based as it goes on. For most people, this kind of out-of-the-box problem-solving and piecing together really vague plot may not be what they want. Eventually it feels less like playing a game and more like solving an ARG. But it's a very different experience, and you might find a lot to enjoy and appreciate here. As long as you don't mind turning your brain into an overcooked GPU. The Persona series has exploded in popularity over the years, and it's not hard to see why. The engaging stories, likable characters, social simulation elements, there's a lot to appreciate. For all its strengths, though, the choices you make in the story don't really matter all that much. More often than not, all they do is maybe determine what ending you get, and a lot of other games do that. Now, if only there was a Persona game where your choices actually did affect the story. Oh wait, there totally is. Devil Survivor! In Devil Survivor, a group of teenagers gain the ability to summon demons. And, well, so do a bunch of other people, which leads Tokyo to be put into lockdown. Given the circumstances, things quickly go from tense to catastrophic. And as such, you're forced to make some incredibly difficult decisions about the broom closet. Depending on your choices, characters can join you, desert you, and even die. As the stakes constantly escalate, you go from making decisions that determine the fate of your friends to those that affect humanity as a whole. This was bolstered even further with the 8th Days in the 3DS remake, where you get to see the fallout from the ending you chose. And by far the biggest example of it is Naoya's. Do you mercilessly slaughter everyone in your way, or convince them to fight alongside you? One thing's for sure, Oh no, we have some breaking news, don't we? Many people play video games to distract themselves from the treacherous world of politics. But what if there was a game that not only showcased that treacherous world, but also forced the player to make decisions that directly affected the fabric of the nation's political situation? On that note, not for broadcast. Yeah, you were probably expecting this one by now. You step into the shoes of Alex Winston, a faceless, gender-neutral protag who one fateful day is tasked with editing a live broadcast of the national nightly news. You begin to edit all the subsequent broadcasts after a guy that trains you basically says, "Fuck this shit, I'm out." The decisions you make in this game are based on what you want to show to the viewing audience and what you want to censor. Sure, probably not a huge deal of beeping out the fucking swear words, but at some point in the game you're asked to censor speech that speaks against the government. Do you comply? Or do you stand against the prime ministers because you disagree with their policies? This isn't what you signed up for, but you might have to make a choice. What happens when the resistance group hacks into your broadcast? Do you support them? Or do you ignore them in favor of keeping the viewers and your boss happy? On top of that, you have to make decisions in your own personal life via visual novel segments, which the developers have dubbed the incident system. Here you choose how to conduct yourself as a partner, a parent, even an employee, which affects your relationships and your wealth. Every plot point in this game shares a different yet contemporary topic of discussion. A lot of it can be tied to US politics, but you don't have to see it that way. You're constantly being pressured to side with one group over the other, and sadly, you can't side with one without facing extreme ethical repercussions. Making that decision is about the same as trying to determine which end of a double-edged sword you want to cut yourself with. Either way, you're going to look down and find that you're bleeding out. Full motion video is not common in the games industry anymore, as most FMV games from the past have been less than stellar. Though I still miss the Civ 2 console, they were hilarious. But Not For Broadcast takes full advantage of this format. And with so many little decisions and so much footage, the developers filmed for 43 hours. That was enough footage to earn the devs a Guinness World Record. And this isn't even counting the game's 3 DLCs. Don't even get me started on the actors, who do a really good job even as they have to act in all the different routes you could potentially take. I encourage y'all, play this game. It's fun, downright hilarious at times, but it's also informative. It uses its player choice system for the purpose of teaching you how to make the right calls, but even the right calls have consequences. But regardless of those consequences, their choice is the only you can make.
Only you can make tomorrow better.
Now, can we turn the lights back on, please? Watching a video on YouTube. The video in particular is a countdown, and the number 5 spot of this countdown is a game called Slay the Princess. In this game, there's a princess, and you're here to slay her. If you don't, it will be the end of the world. Well, you don't necessarily have to, but much like the Stanley Parable, the narrator of this game is a rather persistent DM who will do anything to ensure that the story goes how he wants it. It becomes a matter of who you trust more. The narrator? The princess? The hero? The choice really is yours. You can be merciful to the princess and she'll be a sweetheart, or you can go through with your mission and she'll become much more threatening. Why, thank you for asking, viewer. Those of you whom have followed me for quite a while know that I'm not always an indie horror fan, but from the gothic art style to the horrific depictions of the princess, the tense music and hilarious banter between the voices, Slay the Princess manages to spark my fancy in a way that most other indie horror games often don't. Oh, come on, it's quite obvious, isn't it? The sheer scope of the decisions. Sure, while it doesn't have more involved gameplay mechanics like Void Stranger or Not For Broadcast, nearly every single dialogue tree unlocks a new route in your quest. Each time you die, the game resets and you'll respawn in a slightly altered version of your reality. Then you come across a disturbing figure that explains to you the gravity of your decisions, and each decision you make, you will end up second-guessing. The fate of the universe is in your hands, and each decision reflects every aspect of your character. Not just your beliefs, but your personality and moral alignment. Your first decision could very well determine who you are as a person, and the scale of that decision combined with the psychological horror elements makes Slay the Princess a treat for everyone to experience themselves. Oh, bloody hell.
Let me be the first to show you the
broom closet. The saying bigger is better has been the go-to for a lot of AAA developers as of late, and it's probably why we're in the state we're in right now. Everyone's trying to push the envelope with bigger open worlds, but a lot of those games fall into the trap of having huge worlds but nothing to do in them. The formula has been cracked for years now. You want your world to feel big? make it feel lived in, and you make it so that the world changes based on what you do. Take a trip to the wastelands of Fallout New Vegas to see exactly how this can be achieved. New Vegas drops you into its sprawling world and tells you to interact with it however you want. And as far as Fallout games go, it's easily the most immersive. Sure, Bethesda titles like Skyrim have it beat in scale, but Obsidian's New Vegas world feels more alive than any of Bethesda's outings, and that's in no small part to the charm of the characters and side quests. Throughout the game, you can choose between different factions and decisions depending on what you want to see for the wasteland. Depending on who you help and how, quests can branch into completely different routes. You can side with the enigmatic Mr. House and help him realize his utopia. How about the other three main quote-unquote routes for this story? You can also side with the NCR, which does a lot of morally questionable things for the greater good. But hey, it's at least preferable than siding with the insane theocratic mess that is Kaiser's Legion, unless you're feeling like an evil route, of course. The game even gives you the option to go rogue and side with nobody, charting your own path. No matter what you do, the game's ending will reflect it and give you a "where are they now?" showing how you affected everyone you came across on your journey. The game has no perfect ending. The quote-unquote best ending is entirely your own. You're free to choose what aligns with what you like. New Vegas is a game that's been getting a growing following as of late, and it's not hard to see why. In an age where games tend to have the width of oceans but the depth of a puddle, the world of New Vegas stands out from the crowd. Also, the game has an entire faction of Elvis impersonators. Just want to put that out there. And yes, what happens to them is entirely up to you. Hey, you can fight me on this. I like all the Dark Pictures games. On top of the extensive range of character interactions, the way these games are written just speaks to me. Yeah, I even like Man of Medan and Little Hope. Of course, I don't think they're perfect, but I still like them. But let's not kid ourselves. Until Dawn is still the best one. Story is simple. A bunch of whippersnappers had a prank gone wrong in a cabin within a snowstorm. Some of them went missing over it, and a year later, they had a reunion to try and rekindle old threads. But of course, there are twists and turns as the darkness of the past would come back to haunt our protagonists. Like the other games, Until Dawn is a horror survival where the characters live or die based on the choices you make. This game demands you pay special attention to every hint, from future predicting totems to established info to your character's personalities. Your choices, as well as your performance, write the story, and you only get one shot. Butterfly Effect is the name of the game. For example, there's a love quadrangle between Mike, Jess, Emily, and Matt. Whether or not Matt and Mike got into a fight over Emily affects whether or not Emily and Jess get into a fight over Mike, which affects whether or not Matt and Emily get into a fight over... Okay, you get the point.
It's a pretty complicated love square.
Also, Mike being a good boyfriend affects how little clothing Jess has later in the game. Okay, they're not all winners. The choices don't just come from the main story either. The therapist's questions also affect your playthrough. Yes, some of it is ultimately placebo, but you won't be able to tell the first time. And that applies to the main game too. It keeps you on your toes, in that while some choices don't ultimately matter, those that do will make those feel like they matter. Heck, MatPat was so paranoid he might have duped someone for missing a high five.
There's 5, girl.
Sure, there are some characters that get a bit of plot armor, and you do gotta work extra to make sure a certain someone who is really tricky to keep alive would survive. It's okay, Chris, you're worth it. But everything else is fair game. The whole game really does nail the experience of an interactive horror flick. In the end, you're free to follow the tropes that come with it, subvert it, or forego it altogether to your heart's content.
I think we all know where this is going, so let's just skip to the end.
If there is any game known for just how much your choices dictate what happens, it's gotta be Undertale. No fancy intro necessary, Undertale took the internet by storm with just how many choices it gives you and how they affect the plot. Oh, really, Josh? Your choices matter? There's only 3 routes. Really? Every interaction with the characters feels organic, and every one of them can be spared or killed depending on what your run is. Everyone knows about the pacifist ending, of course, but the neutral route has a shocking amount of depth and awareness for what you do. It's seriously underrated. Depending on your actions, you could leave the underground in the hands of any one of the main cast, up to and including an ending where, at the lack of anyone capable of leadership, a random dog takes power. But oh, that's not the end of it. Go as far as killing everyone you can, and Undertale bites back hard with the no mercy route. You want to kill everyone? Go ahead and try. The game brings you and itself to the limit until literally nothing remains, something only a deal with the devil can bring back. Heck, the game catches on to you doing multiple playthroughs, or heck, abandoning playthroughs at key moments. Nothing you do lacks consequences. Everything matters. Do another run after killing someone, and they'll have deja vu of you and Flowey. That little weed will not hesitate to rub it in your face. You can't undo your mistakes. The game even has the foresight to call you out for watching Let's Plays or data mining. Undertale takes your expectations for it being a game and uses that to its advantage to create an experience like no other. So imagine everyone's shocked to see Deltarune hit you with "your choices don't matter." Toby Fox's mind works in ways none of us can begin to comprehend. Lisa the Painful. Cut off your own limbs or sacrifice your friends. Fun choices. Dragon Age Origins. You can decide who lives, who dies, and who gives you the stink eye if you don't save their village. Fear and Hunger 2. Termina. More characters, more gods, more gory ways to perish. Hollow Knight. Let Zote die.
You should have killed me when you had the chance!
Trust me on this. Spore, while not executed the best, the variety of gameplay choices based on evolution definitely deserves recognition. Coffin of Andy and Laylee. Oh my goodness, Andrew punched his sister. He can grow a spine after all, if you let him. Robot Alchemic Drive.
Knock knock, get the door.
The Broom Closet. You know, no matter what game you play, there is always going to be some limit to what choices are possible. The game will have to follow a linear path in some way to some sort of end state. You can alter the path or do drastic actions to make major plot points happen sooner, but in the end, the game is always the will of whoever wrote it. In the sense, you aren't the master of the story. They are. A dungeon master if it, yeah, it's Baldur's Gate 3. D&D is where RPGs and choice-based games got their mainstream appeal. So it makes sense that the best D&D game would be our number one. In Baldur's Gate 3, you play as, well, whoever you want. A custom character that finds themselves infected by a tadpole creature to turn them into mind flayers before accidentally being saved. Now you journey with these other infected to find a cure and the truth behind these events. That's the premise, but anyone who's ever heard of this game notes that that's just the surface. In true D&D fashion, pretty much any choice you make has some sort of ripple effect on the story or even your gameplay. Whether it's saying the wrong thing to a random NPC or having the wrong companion in your party at the wrong time, it could lead to your companion leaving or your entire party dying and having to restart at the last checkpoint. But that doesn't mean you have complete control. You are still following a story led by a dungeon master who will narrate your choices or lack thereof. And even above the DM, there is a force that not even the gods can alter. The will of the dice.
Just so you know, Jeff, you were not creating 6 different timelines.
Of course I am, Abed.
Because of course we got to roll d20s to make choices and pray to RNGesus that you don't crit fail. Live by the dice, die by the dice. And with 12 classes, 68 subclasses as of the last patch, and 10 companions, you could play this game hundreds of times and still never see every piece of content. Heck, people are still discovering unique contextual bits of dialogue that no player would conceivably pick in their playthrough, yet the game was prepped for it anyway. There's even technically a 7th origin character called the Dark Urge that can alter the story dramatically just by choosing it over the origin characters. Oh, and this game is long. One playthrough will take you 100+ hours at least, and that isn't including all the resets and save scumming you're going to be doing to get the results you want. Yes, this still is a video game. Nothing is ever truly permanent. Other than the save scumming, you can also just mod out the dice rolls, give yourself better odds, or just brute force everything using cheats. And unlike Undertale, it won't remember your choices to guilt you later. But with more ending alterations than the average hourly playtime, this game will almost literally be different each time you play it. At least in subtle ways, the core story will still occur. Gosh, does Act 1 drag on those repeat playthroughs? But it's so worth it to experience the closest thing we ever got to a journey that we can really choose our own ending. Other than making our own games anyways. About the Broom Closet.
I get it!
I'm joshscorcher, and I am ending this quickly because it's my choice. Deuces!
Kaboom!